Hi, Aashay. Thank you so much for coming today, and congratulations on a massive 120 point improvement to a 695 from a 575.
Thanks a lot, Rita. I'm really happy to be here.
So, and we're really happy to have you. So, for the people who don't know you, right, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Aashay. I graduated a week ago and I gave my exam on 5th of June and I'm currently working as a data analyst intern and I scored a 695 on 5th of June.
Wonderful and direct, right? So, your journey with GMAT prep started way back in 2023, and across the months, you've overcome a lot of hurdles. You've grown your ability, everything, right? What do you think, looking back, was really the biggest challenge you had to overcome?
I think the biggest challenge for me was believing in myself because I am like a grade A overthinker. I overthink my skills. When I'm trying to analyze the question, I think that maybe this was an easy question and that's why I got it right. But then actually it is medium or difficult question. But then I kind of doubt myself. But then this time around, I tried to I tried to do not doubt myself at least in this case, but then I try to focus on getting things right because I believe there is 80-20 rule across everywhere. It's like 80% your skills, 80% your skills and 20% your luck. You can't change the luck, but at least you can push that 80% skill set to its max. But that was my aim this time, and I pushed it to its max this time. I remember you saying that GMAT is an exam which kind of preys on your vulnerabilities. So if you are not confident enough, then you won't be because then you don't have that self belief, and that kind of changed a lot of things for me because then I thought that let's not self doubt right now. I was self doubting myself on verbal, so then I kept pushing myself, kept saying that this is doable, this is something which we can really achieve, and
And you achieved it, as we
yeah,
can tell, with that 695 score, where initially your target score was very different. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the interview, right?
yeah,
But let's rewind. Let's really start at the beginning. I know we just talked about your mindset, and I know that from 2023 to 2024, the mindset with which you approached your prep also really changed. Can you describe the critical mindset shift that really enabled the 695 score?
yeah. I think I was not totally focused before. I think from September, October, November, December, I I I gave myself a lot of time to prepare for the GMAT and like actually did a lot of stuff, watching videos, solving questions. So I think I checked all the boxes in terms of the prep work, but then doing it the right way in terms of mindset actually changes things because then if you do it just for, let's say I practice 50 questions, but then are you trying to practice it to gain knowledge or just going to practice it to solve it? Because then those 50 questions might teach you new things which you can apply ahead. And then let's say you do not fine tune your process while uh, learning, that doesn't help because by the time you are done across the section, you should remember what you actually learned. And that's why refining skills, I think, is important, not just watching videos and then taking notes, because then if you can't inculcate that in your process, it doesn't help. And I think that shift helped me solve questions right in the right manner because I know that when I was doing things in December or November, even easy questions felt difficult because I knew the concept, but I wasn't able to solve them in the right time or in the right frame of mind. And making that change helped.
Wonderful, right? So I know that one of the catalysts for that change was, you joined the eGMAT course towards the end of December, and one of the first things that you really did was take a mock test.
Yeah,
And in that mock test, as you can see, you scored a 575, right? A 60th percentile, and you were reasonably at about the 60th percentile across all three sections with a V80, Q80, 79, and a D76. And
Right.
across the board, you improved on your 695 to a V84, a Q88, and a D82. So subsectionally, you excelled across the board.
Right.
Once you'd really seen this score, right, that's when you also started preparing on the course. And I remember that the first subsection that you really started with was quant.
Yeah.
What were the key things that really helped you improve to a Q88? How did the course really help you make that 8 point improvement, 9 point
Yeah.
improvement?
Yeah, I was I come from an engineering background, so I thought that maths might be easy, and it
Mhm,
is easy in terms of at least catching the things which are mentioned in the question. But then I kind of underestimated the GMAT's ability to surprise someone, and then I kind of got stumbled upon really quickly, and I realized that this is not the right way to approach quant. I'll have to learn things again
mhm,
and internalize those and then move forward. So this time in December, then the first thing which I did was to go for quant because I was really sad that I wasn't able to get that score
mhm,
in quant because that was something which I had kept my score hinged upon because I thought that verbal is difficult, DI is new, quant I know is a something which I have overcome before. So let's go for quant. And this time around, for quant, the structure on eGMAT platform is really nice in terms of the cementing process. Like
mhm,
you learn things and then you practice it. That was something which I think I missed while I was doing it before
mhm,
because learning things and then just going ahead to the next concept you might forget what you learned before and then you might miss out few things which were really important. Cementing kind of fine tunes that, refines the process because then you find that okay, maybe you did not understand that concept, you just saw the video and then that kind of helps point out those flaws in you. And this is the main point that I really like about eGMAT, the cementing process and all the quizzes set up at the right time because doing it at the right time is important. You can't
mhm.
do it at the end because then you have forgotten half the things.
So testing yourself constantly was really important in checking that you were internalizing the right
Yeah,
processes, right?
yeah,
And I know one of the topics that you really made a lot of improvement on and really excelled in was also word problems, right? And I think there was a structure in word problems and number properties that really helped you. Can you talk a bit about that?
yeah. In terms of work, word, and distance questions. So it's like the questions are kind of easy if you can actually get that points from the question quickly. And let's say you do not arrange them well, you might not get it right in time. And getting it right in time is the name of the game in this because how can you solve it in 4 minutes and then say I got it right because then maybe you have to speed up the process and the structure given on eGMAT platform for these questions I really liked it a lot because I was messing up a lot of these questions specifically even though they were easy but without the lack of structure I was struggling and then
Mhm.
the structure mentioned on the curriculum was pretty nice in terms of having to get them in a table and actually solve them and having a structure helps. I think that is something which was taught to me by the Quant lectures.
Makes a lot of sense, right? And I can see that as talking about learning things on the platform, I can also see that as you went through, and this is something that's mirrored, we can run really quickly through all your quant courses. You've done exceptionally well in terms of how you've approached these modules. You've consistently scored A's and A minuses, the occasional B for sure, but almost all of your grades are really spectacular, which shows that you were very, very immersed in your learning. Was that a conscious effort to reach those kind of high scores? And why was that really important throughout your preparation?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, my main aim was to actually implement what I learned, and then cementing. And in those quizzes, I was able to actually spend that time um, trying to get that questions right. And then it's like a fun game. You learn things, you can get to implement those quickly. If you like approach it the end of the section quickly, then you can solve them. But then what problem is like really big sections, you have to wait a little bit to get to that end point. But yeah, uh, it helps. I mean, solving questions on the regular interval keeps your mind refreshed. And I think that is something I followed across this journey of 5 months. I kept solving questions every single day. I never missed solving a question on any day, let it be a work day or a Sunday, Saturday. I at least solved five questions each for verbal and quant. DI I did not solve because there's a lack of questions there, but then at least verbal and quant, a lot of questions on GMAT Club on eGMAT, solving at least five helps a lot to keep that mind running on these questions.
Makes a lot of sense. So both through the course and externally, because in the course itself, you must have solved at least 100 plus questions on each course
Yeah,
pretty easily, right? You really made sure that you solved those questions well, you kept those muscles running, and you took every step possible in those levels between you and the big boss, right?
yeah,
So that was essential. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. So this was really the quant side of things where you focused on really applying those concepts, internalizing them, and making sure that you miss nothing out. One of the things that also I know helped you here was the process skills, in particular, considering all the cases, right? So
yeah.
how did having those set of skills kind of help you in your quad journey?
Yeah, I mean, when we are solving those permutations or probability question, we are told that you have to consider these cases. But then, if you are being told explicitly that these are the skills, and then let's say on each question, you need to ensure that you know that you have to check this, uh, checking it all the time, and then learning first of all learning that skill because you don't know you know it internally. I mean, when you're solving, you kind of make the mental notes that yeah, I'm going to check that, but then having it brought down on the screen explicitly that yes, these are the seven skills, try to remember these and these are important, like translate and all. And even on number properties, if you miss an edge case, you miss the last, if it's an at least or at most, then you miss that one thing, and then you solved for 2 minutes and then you still didn't get it right. That is a sad feeling. So then ensuring that you do not miss this, it's important for those process skills, especially the cases. So that's why I internalize the cases specifically because in terms of probability and permutation, I got them wrong a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of helped me manually check myself. Even before marking any answer, I used to ask myself, have I considered all the cases or have I missed something? Was there anything specific the question mentioned? Okay, if not, then we can move ahead. And that is something which I had a banter with myself every time I saw a font.
Mhm. And I think the fact that you paused at every question to really think, did I do the best job that I could with this question? I think that
Yeah,
also really helped you not carry forward mistakes from one quiz to the next. And
right.
I think those results are most evident when I really look at your accuracies on Scholaranium, right?
Yeah,
Scholar questions are hard, there's no doubt about it. But you've reached some really spectacular accuracies here, right? Your lowest is a 65%, which still translates to at least an 85% accurate percentile, right?
right.
And these all indicate that you were beyond ready for that 90th, 95th plus percentile, and you delivered exactly that on the test day, right? So really, really well done here. I'm so happy to see these scores.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that aside from quant, one of the really challenging sections that you overcame was also DI, where you went from a D76 to a D82, which is a 96th percentile score. So that's no mean feat, right? And I also knew that DI was the section you tackled last. Why was that so?
Yeah, I think that solving or even learning DI last is important because DI is a mixture of like both quant and verbal. So there are process skills which you learn from quant, there are tricks and tips which you get from number properties, and all those concepts are just brought into this section and merged into this amazing mixture of these qualities. So there might be two or three topics mixed together in DI, and then you have to read it and internalize what that question actually said. If you have no foundation in your quant and verbal, doing DI will be a waste because then you won't understand what actually meant because then there are like percentage question. If you are really good in percentage and you build that foundation, spend that time in quant, then solving those DS questions on quant, DS percentage question is really easy because then you know that oh, you have seen a lot of percentage question, you know that okay, they are just trying to mess up with me, or they're just trying to do a plus minus. So then you are able to solve that sufficient insufficient question. So knowing that things beforehand helps a lot. So I think anyone who might approach it now, they should just do quant verbal or verbal quant, and then only and only they are sufficiently confident with their skills on quant verbal, they should move to DI, because it's a totally dependent game on DI.
Makes a lot of sense, right? Absolutely. It's a whole set of skills that you have to add to really tackle the DI section, right? So makes a lot of sense. What were the real most important skills that you learned in the DI section in, say, GITA or TPA? What was really important there?
Yeah, I think the theory of owning the data set, I like it a lot. I think I kind of did not, I did not know that it's really important to like read the passage that closely, because then I used to read the passage, but then actually reading it is difficult, because then you have to spend that time thinking about the relationships that were made in that question, how the author in that question like joined those two, three things. Knowing that beforehand helps, because then while you solve the actual question, you know that these things are mentioned, or even they had kind of briefly spoken about. It seemed like RC, you need to have a mental map of what was said, and
Mhm.
not having that and then directly going like devastates you all the way. So then that was the one thing which I made a change in. While solving the GITA, TPA, as well as MSR question. MSR specifically, I would like to highlight it's really difficult.
Mhm.
MSR questions, you mentioned they're steroids, RC on steroids. So they are really, and then I was really lucky that on my exam, the MSR was a non-math, no, I mean, not, I think it was non-math, yeah, non-math question.
Mhm.
So, and it was an easy read passage, at least in terms of watching the three passages. I was still confident that, okay, I might be able to solve it in 7 or 8 minutes, because I had cases where I had to spend like 13, 14 minutes and still not able to solve the entire MSR. So the strategy for MSR is really difficult, but then it's a different ball game, I guess.
Makes a lot of sense. I think maybe also your MSR was just easy because you had put so much effort into your entire prep and done such a good job. Let's not take away from that as well, especially
Yeah,
because, again, when I look at your stats for DI, right, really, really phenomenal. Like you said, DI is tricky, it is hard, but despite that, you're at a 50% hard accuracy. And in all the other three subsections, bang on exactly where you need to be. Really good stats here, right? So
yeah,
very, very well done. Now, lastly, we really talk about verbal, where again you've reached that 91st percentile with a V84, right?
yeah.
Looking back on it, what do you think are some really key strategies that are important for breaking that 90th percentile barrier on the verbal section?
Uh, One of the things which I messed up before was just reading the question. I mean, you can't just read the question and then hope that I will get something in return when you're reading the options. You just can't do that. And I learned it a really hard way, and I hope that people don't do it now. Making those linkages while you are reading the question helps, because sometimes you can find the answer directly in the linkages, and then
Mhm.
it saves you like 30 seconds already. Pre-thinking in general helps. I wasn't able to implement it a lot in the hard questions, but easy questions or medium questions, I was able to implement it easily. Because once you get a good read on a question and then you build that stamina to solve those many questions, it kind of happens automatically. You kind of make those linkages easily, that, oh, they said this and they said something else. You know that, okay, there's something in between that might help. And then you yourself answer that question, and then you go in an option. Maybe it does not match, but then you at least have that prior knowledge. Putting yourself in that author's shoe sometimes helps a lot, because there are cases in CR where they are saying that there will be a loss, there will be a profit. So then you, as someone thinking from an author's point of view, also helps. So even if you are struggling with those questions, try to think from the author's perspective. Put yourself in that shoe. Put yourself in that situation. It's fun, because then you can relive someone else's question.
Oh, yeah. And I think what you've said here is really important. It's that you've not let your outside knowledge really poison the database, right? You've put yourself looking through that author's lens and containing yourself within that ecosystem. And that has allowed you to just focus laser sharp on what the question is asking you, nothing else. So very,
Yeah.
very important that. What about on the RC side of things?
Yeah, RC is, if in my case, I mean, I know how to read things, but then actually reading things and actually making those notes is difficult. You have to learn that skill, I guess. I mean, at least for non-native speakers, I guess, because we kind of read to read, but then reading to actually capture points, capture the author's perspective is important in RC because the idea inferred question will get you if you do not read the passage correctly. So then making those notes, which is something which is taught on the curriculum, helps a lot because then you have an idea how to approach this question, viewpoint analysis, as well as how to, what was the tone of the passage which was mentioned. That helps.
Got it. Very, very true. So I know, and we touched upon this during Quant as well, but one of the really important tools that helped you across verbal, quant, DI, and even beyond was the Scholarinium platform, right? Our quizzing platform. It helped you in cementing, it helped you in other ways. But why do you think a tool like Scholarinium and the analytics it gives you is important with an exam like the GMAT?
Yeah, I think it's really important because how would you judge yourself when you don't have the pertinent analytics to gauge did you actually solve it? Solving is one thing, doing it in time is the other. So then you have to check both the aspects. Did you solve it right? So then first thing is okay, let's try to solve all the questions correct. Then getting them in time and then doing both of them at the same time is the trick, but then knowing those data points help because then you can craft your own journey, see that let's say I'm messing up on this particular topic in terms of time, so then I'll study a little bit more. Verbal specifically, I'm impressed by the eGMAT repository of questions. I'm scared also. The verbal questions are real difficult on the platform. Quant
Mhm.
is also difficult, but verbal I think is a little bit more difficult, and that helps because then you are prepared for the worst. Then medium and easy doesn't
Very
budge you
fair.
enough. Yeah.
Very fair. And I think you also really utilize the expert solutions also given, right?
Yeah,
Through these
yeah,
questions.
totally. Yeah, I think that helps a lot in terms of thinking from the perspective. I mean, it's not important in con that much, but in verbal, really a lot. Because in RC specifically, when I am reading the passage and when someone else is reading the passage, I found that I was not stopping at the right times. Even
Mhm.
when the other person actually did, they found that there was something different. There was a viewpoint change. There was a however in between, and I missed it. But then when I heard them saying that, when I heard them saying the passage out loud, I realized that I'm kind of missing those points. And those expert solutions kind of help because then you can refine your process on your own. I mean, you don't learn it from someone else. You have to learn it on yourself. But then having someone's correct answer, or which is sample answer, helps because then you know that okay, they approached it this way. It might not be the best way, but then at least you know that there are some points you missed and then you can inculcate in your own prep. So that is phenomenal. I think I really like that.
Wonderful. Right? So you now learned all your individual sections, you had processes, your concepts, you practiced through cementing, you refined your process. And I think that's when, once you have these individual places, that you move on to the third phase of your prep journey, which is test readiness. And
Yeah.
for you, that was one of the most important phases that really helped you get to 695. Firstly, what is test readiness?
I would like to say that uh, when we are solving in isolation, that is a different game. And then solving it all together, it is a skill and it takes time. So let's say I get a good accuracy on Scholarinium, but then I might not get it when I'm solving the bunch together because then you are not prepared to solve those questions in its entirety. You might just know that one section perfectly, but then if you mix it up, people get kind of scared. When I used to get scared when I see a permutation question and then the next it was a word problem, I used to say that you're already putting so much pressure on me with the permutation question and then a word problem that too this long, two paragraphs. So then building that habit of solving those 21 questions um, puts you in that mindset because at the end of the day, when you are giving the exam, you have to give them all three together. It's not like you're gonna solve those in isolation. So building that strength, which something I really lacked before. I think in March or April, I was really tired when I used to solve. I used to get really tired when I used to solve questions in continuity. And I had mentioned to you before that I know how to solve it, but then my mind just switches off. It kind of goes in autopilot, which it shouldn't, because then you had prepared well, and then you still can't solve it because then your mind kind of switches it off. So practice is the key here, and practice, but that is should be directional, because then you can't just solve 10 questions of word problem. That is not correct. You have to solve a mix of 21 questions. I mean, in this case, GFE, 21 questions on Quant. You have to solve those 21 questions in the time frame. I used to solve it almost every day in the month of May.
Hmm.
So
Leading up to the
I,
test day itself.
yeah, totally. I have exhausted every sectional test on GMAT Club as well as eGMAT.
All of them. And I think it's also really important to stress here that this phase was valuable because you had already had those individual pieces in place. You mentioned, right, that you're this prepared, therefore you have to do this. But I'm
Right.
sure if for example, your word problems was not in place or your algebra was not in place conceptually or process wise, that would have just gotten worse in TR. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you need to get your foundation set in before you go for test readiness, because otherwise, then it would create more faults, because then you would find that you are exhausted on the word problems and then you mess up the number properties question, even though you know number properties well, but does that you got tired, and that is something which we don't want to have.
Hmm.
Because you prepped a lot and then you still aren't able to score because of these things, which are actually which are something like muscle. We can actually build them. These are the skill we can build them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. And I think it's towards this DI, the end of, we were connected for pretty much all of your prep, but it's towards the end of DI and this test readiness phase that we really notched up that mentorship aspect through the last mile push program, right?
Yeah.
So, how was both the program and having a mentor helpful during this last phase of your preparation?
Yeah. Mentorship helps. I can vouch for that. Because I mean, even people have study buddies as well. I mean, I wasn't able to get one because my mindset was a little bit different in terms of this. But if someone gets a study buddy, that is really great. I mean, it's almost the same, because then you can share your journey with someone who is equally minded in this exam. But mentorship helps because you know you can share your problems with someone who knows that exam, because I can share it with my family, but then they won't know exactly what I'm faltering at. But then a mentor knows that they have been through this journey, they know the problems, and you can share easily. I mean, in terms of in my example, at least I was kind of I felt bad when I was getting bad scores on mocks, and I
Mhm.
kind of shared it with you. But then I at least had someone to share it, because then I don't have a outlet to share that sadness, I guess, in this game. But then it helped, because then I was able to bounce back, and I remember I gave the fourth eGMAT mock. I had like 635, and then
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe eGMAT mocks are difficult, but then again I gave an official mock, and then I got 695, and I was really happy. Then my confidence just soared. But then people will try to judge me from that point. But then before 695 and all those easy math marks, I was in a bad place. So then mentorship helps, because then you know someone who's there to support you in this journey.
Yeah. And I think it was between the 635 and the 695 mock also that we did a lot of that test readiness. And I
Yeah,
think that was also the point where I really came in and I told you, listen, none of your stats indicate that you're at a 635 level. You are meant for more than that. You have
yeah,
to do more than that. So once I think having that external perspective on and understanding, an expert understanding of this is where you are and this is what you can achieve, and then having someone push you to achieve that is also helpful for a whole lot of people. So
so
that's where that is, right? So one thing is that after we did all of that test readiness, I think your last out of your last four mocks, three was 695 and one was 725, if I remember correctly. But you had a string of 695s and then a 725, correct?
yeah, I guess, yeah. I had seen a few questions on GMAT Club, so I was not counting those. But then again, I had got like 167 695 was pure of my skill. I had not seen that question, but then For other mocks, I occasionally seen because I was trying to solve a lot of question on GMAT Club, and then I unnecessarily or unexpectedly solved a few of the official question which I shouldn't have. But then sometimes it just pops up on the daily practice question, and then I don't have a choice now because then I've seen that question and I have to solve it now.
You've got to do what you've got to do. Makes sense, right? Okay. So now, you have your foundations in place. You've practiced on the right set of questions. You've built your stamina and you've shown consistency across mocks. Then you actually went and took the test. And I know that there were a lot of unexpected moving parts on that test day. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I try to keep my variables as much as in control, but then things just go out of place. And I was sad that I was sad and scared that it might affect me this time. Thankfully, it did. But
Mhm.
then I had scheduled my exam for 3rd of June, but then Pearson emailed me on 31st that due to some technical issues, they would be canceling or they would want me to reschedule it. Then there's no set procedure, at least from their side, which says that you will get a refund or you would get an opportunity to reschedule. So then I was in a limbo for 6 hours. I think at 12 a.m. one June I got the email that your money has been refunded. But then I was happy that at least I got the money back, so I can reschedule it now because it would have been a double whammy then because then I have to spend twice to give one exam. So then I scheduled it for 5th. Then I still wasn't at my best health wise. I was facing some issues breathing. I don't know why. I was just maybe scared of the exam. I don't know, but then I still gave the exam. And it
Mhm.
worked out.
Mhm. And on the exam day, I know that with the breaks, there was another issue, right?
Yeah,
Um, where, if I remember correctly, you accidentally took the break before the verbal section instead of after because you hit the wrong
yeah,
button, right? But you did really well after that, correct? And you
yeah,
got
yeah,
that V84, D82. So I think both the fact that despite the date change and despite the unexpected break, the fact that you did well, it shows that you really conquered your biggest challenge, which was that lack of belief. Because if you didn't believe in your skill set, right, you wouldn't have been able to cope up with the flux in your test day experience, so to say. So,
yeah, yeah. Totally. I mean, I did not get a chance to overthink because the break was so small. I had only 5 or 6 minutes to take the break because then you have to go back in the center. So this time I think the more time I spend thinking something, that is I think the issue. I have realized that. So then I think I'll go start cutting the time to think at least in terms of these things because when the, because I tried telling myself that this is just a part of the process. I might have taken a break early, but that might help me. I don't know. It might help me solve verbal easily, and then it actually did. So sometimes self belief and then talking to yourself helps.
and you did it. You succeeded. 695, Q88, V84, D82. It all
Yeah,
fell in line, right? So now, 120 points up, a near perfect quant score with just a single mistake, an exceptional performance on DI and verbal. You've learned a lot of things. If you had to
yeah.
share your most valuable learnings with someone else who's some maybe starting out or somewhere through their GMAT journey, what do you think is the most important thing for them to really keep in mind?
I think the most important takeaway was to give 100% on what you're doing. I had, I had, as I said, I had prepped before in September, October, November, but then it wasn't 100%. It kind of, it was an on and off situation, which is not something you want to be in. If you are going in, please go all in because then what's the point of doing this entire process? It is expensive. You have to pay for tutoring, you have to pay for exam, and then it is better to give it once and give it the best rather than give it separated. Uh, as I said, just taking a course doesn't help because then you have to put in that effort, and then putting that effort every single day, builds confidence, builds momentum, builds resilience. So doing the right thing at the right time helps because I have been studying for the last 5 months every single day. The only day I missed was because I had fever, but then every other day I used to study. I mean, you don't have to study a lot every day even if you break it in chunks. I know that people don't have time. I did an internship while I was doing my study, so I used to get hardly 3 to 4 hours, but then having that routine set up every day, on these 3 hours I'll study, or maybe 2 hours, but then I'll study or practice something. Even practicing helps because then it keeps you engaged, because when you forget things, that is the point where you might get stuck, because now you have to go back and study the same thing which you studied, and it is more difficult now because then you know half the things and half you don't, and you don't know which half you don't. Yeah, but then that takes time.
Very, very true, right? The importance of momentum, of your focus, of your efforts, it's all invaluable. So I think there are a lot of really important takeaways for everyone to take away from here. Thank you so much, Aashay, once again for coming on this interview. As your mentor, I'm so happy and so proud of all the improvements that you've made. And I know everyone at eGMAT is ecstatic about your success. So congrats. Thank you. To all our viewers out there, if you have any questions or if you have any questions about your own preparation, do let us know. But to all of you out there, all the best, happy learning, and take care. Bye-bye.